Today, our topic is, are you prepared for objections? You know, selling cars is a great career field. And we all know that how to make presentations and demonstrations, but where most of us get tied up now is with the objections. And I'm going to share with you some thoughts today. If you're going to be successful in this industry, you have to be prepared for objections. You can't take negativity in a bad way. You can't have a defeatist attitude, and you have to be able to accept rejection. Rejection is going to happen. It is the way things work. So what is an objection? So an objection is a statement or question during the negotiation that presents a potential roadblock to consummating the sale. Now, we also talk a lot about obstacles. Obstacles are things that occur during the sales process. So, for example, if I presented numbers and somebody stated, well, the payment's too high, that is an objection. If we're out in the lot, we do a meet and greet, and somebody says, hey, is it okay if I just walk around by myself, or I don't want to drive a car? That is an obstacle. They are two totally different things, and they're dealt with in two totally different manners. In previous shows, we've talked about how to overcome objections, and on your DLA online, you have a whole section on how to overcome objections. So let's ask ourselves this question. Why do people object? Why are they objecting? Well, they object primarily for three reasons. Fear. That's the number one reason. They're scared. We've asked them now to make a decision to spend lots of money. We're giving them value, so it's not like we're not giving them value. We're not taking advantage of them. But they are scared of the decision, scared of parting with their money, scared of the 72-month commitment at $450 a month, whatever the reason may be. The second reason is an elevated defense mechanisms. It's something internal that they become very defensive. That's why when they come to the dealership, they're very defensive. And I've always shared with you, your job is to release those defensive postures one step at a time. And the third reason is they're conditioned to object. They have to object. It's what they think they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to just say, yes, I'll buy the car. They're supposed to object. Now, what is the number one reason why a customer objects to price, payment, or trade? Now, before I go into that, let me share something that I find very interesting. There are only really three major objections you're going to get, and that's it. It's going to be a price or payment. The price is too high, the payment's too high. Number two is going to be trade. You're not giving me enough for my trade. And number three is, I want to go home and think about it. Now, do you get other objections? You're the first place we've been to. I want to go home and pray on it. I need to speak to an advisor. Yes, all those other objections pop up, but they are very small. Those first three, price and payment, trade, and I want to go home and think about it, are the three major objections you're going to get. So why would someone state one of those three? Well, first of all, they're the easiest to gravitate to. They make the most amount of logical sense to the consumer. They're sitting there, you've just told them a price, right off the bat, they can say that it's too expensive. You give them a trade value, they say that it's too expensive. Another reason why people object, and this might be something you don't think about, is they usually get their way. They do. When they say the payment's too high, most of us, and I'm shocked at this, are trained to ask, well, what payment did you have in mind? So we give control to the customer. It is amazing. We have taught you, and I believe that most of you are in control of the sales process. You do an effective meet and greet, and a qualification, an inventory walk, and you do all the steps. And then when it comes to the objection part, you buckle, you fold, and you give all the control over to the customer. I would never, ever, ever ask a customer, well, what payment did you have in mind? What price did you have in mind? Your trade is worth $8,000. You're not giving me enough. How much did you think it was worth? I'm not going to give that control to them. And the only reason why we say that is because we don't have a logical response. And you must have a logical response. Now, if you've watched the last couple of shows, we've talked about the steps, the 3 and 4 steps to the objection process. Okay. I've asked you this before. Should a customer fear us? Should the customer be afraid of us as a salesperson? And the answer is yes, they should be. Because we are trained professionals. We are good at what we do. We do this every day. Most only do this once every 4 or 5 years. So the customer is kind of expecting us to be very strong at overcoming these objections. They know that we are going to be forceful in what we have to do. Unfortunately, a lot of our tactics to overcoming our objections are not good. They're more pressure. I know you might not think you are, but they are. So again, I want to say again, there's three main objections: price and payment, trade, and I want to go home and think about it. Now, listen very carefully to what I'm going to say, and I'll say it a couple of times. First of all, let me set this up. Most people, when you ask them to buy, don't just say yes. I think we can all agree on that. Does it happen? Of course it does. But most of us, most time when we ask, they say no and they give us an objection. Okay. I lost my train of thought for a second here. Now, I remember where I was. So I want you to listen very carefully to this statement. The better the presentation, the better the objection. The better the objection, the easier it is to overcome. So our goal in the sales process is to release defensive postures. Sure, we want to get the yes when we ask for the sale, but if we don't, we want to get objections that we are good at overcoming, that are logical, that we're familiar with. When somebody says to me, one of those three populars, I want to go home and think about it, it means you did not make a good presentation. Now, when someone says to me the price or payment's too high, or you're not giving enough for my trade, fireworks go off in my head. I know I've just sold a car. Those are good, solid objections. Those are buying objections. I want to go home and think about it is not a buying an objection. Someone stating you're the first place we've been to is not a buying objection. So the better your presentation, that's why I always tell you it's so important to make sure that those factors fall into place. The customer's got to find a car they love. Forget about if it's out of their price range. More people will buy a car for more money than less if they don't like the car. Nobody buys a car they don't like because they're saving $50 a month on a payment. Now, does it happen sometimes? Of course it does. Find a car they love. They gotta like you. That's what we talk about. No pressure in the sales process, no trial closes, and they have to want to do business at your dealership. You have those three qualities in place, you're going to make a better presentation, which is going to then get you a better quality objection you can overcome. Now, there are two types of objections that I want to share with you, okay? They're called cement and sand. Just like it sounds, cement like a cement block, sand like the sandbox we played in when we were kids. So what is a cement objection? A cement objection is that we must meet the customer's request right to the penny. It is cement. They are not going to budge. Your payment is $400 a month. Would you like to buy the car? Then they say no, the payment's too high. Then we say something stupid like, well, what payment do you have in mind? And the customer says $350. If it's cement in their mind, they are not going over that $350 payment. Period. End of discussion. Okay. It is not going to happen. Now, what is the reason for a cement objection? What would make somebody give you a cement objection? One where they're not going to budge. And it's typically you're on the wrong car. Now, two reasons this happens is it becomes cement. Number one is, sure, would they buy the car at a ridiculous payment? Of course they would. I mean, of course they would. And number two is they're just giving you a ridiculous payment because they want to exit the process. They want out of it. Now, what is a sand objection? Sand objection is one that they can be moved off their number. It's not a serious objection. They want to play the game. You know, it's like I told you earlier, it's expected for them to object. It's a conditioned response. So they give you an objection. They know they're gonna move. Your payment's $400 a month. Would you like to buy the car? No, it's too much money. What did you have in mind? Again, that stupid statement. And they say $350, and then you start negotiating, and they move up, you move down, they move up, you move down. Those are sand objections. Most sand objections are we call conditions of sales. It's a condition of sale. If you can make this happen, I'll buy the car. Now, the topic of today's session was, are you prepared? So now I've told you about cement and sand. I've told you why people object. I've shared with you the three common objections, and I've shared with you that the better the presentation, the better the objection. Now let's get prepared. This is the most important thing. And this is a task that you have to decide. How prepared do you want to be? Okay. Do you want to be the Larry Bird of basketball, the Michael Jordan? Do you want to be the Tom Brady of football? How prepared do you want to be? These individuals, these athletes, the Williams sisters, they did not get there by accident. They were not born with these skill sets. They practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced for hours and hours and hours. I'm not telling you got to practice and practice and practice. I'm just telling you got to do a little bit of practice. So this is the task that I am putting you up to. What I think, if you really want to be good at this, take those 3 objections. Let's take the first one, the price objection. And I want you to invest 10 minutes today, and I want you to write down your response. And then around 5 o'clock this afternoon, I want you to read your response out loud to yourself. And I want you to massage the response. And for the next 5 days, I want you 3 times a day to read the response out loud. That's it. It's going to take you a minute. But each time you read it, you're going to massage it, change a word, add a word, make it more fluid, whatever you got to do. And I want you to do this for 5 days. I just want you to read the objection out loud. After 5 days of doing this, now I believe you're going to have a good response. Then what I want you to do is for the next 5 days, I want you to rewrite it out on a piece of paper. Every day for 5 days, 2 or 3 times a day, I want you to write out the response. Say in your head, the payment's too high, and I want you to write it out. It's going to take you a couple of minutes. What you're trying to do now is create repetition and muscle memory management. I'll never forget that when I was in school, I used to watch my teacher. She'd think of something, say something, she'd write it down and then throw it away. It was getting into her psyche. It was getting into her confidence. So it's repetition. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again. You've got to create that muscle memory management. I've shared with you a long time ago. I grew up in Boston and I went to see Larry Bird play basketball. I reference him all the time. He would win the game at the buzzer with a free throw shot. And after the game, everyone would leave and he would come back out because my dad would make us stick around and there'd be another 100 people there. And he would go to a spot on the key and with 100 balls over and over and over again. The guy was the greatest ball player of all time, but he still did it over and over and over again 100 times. Muscle memory management. He needed to know when he was at that spot, that did that, and it was going to go in. That's what you need to create. And I don't make a lot of promises, but I am promising you this. This is a promise. If you spend the next 5 days, write it and read it out loud 3 times a day. And then the next 5 days, writing it out 3 times a day, you are going to get good at that response and you will own that response. And then when somebody says to you, the payment's too high, you'll have no problem spitting out a response. I also think you should role play. I think that's a very positive thing. And again, it creates a situation where you have it in your mind over and over again. A couple of things here. I'm going to wrap up. Again, I told you today it was going to be a short show. You cannot call yourself a professional unless you can handle all objections at a high level. Okay. And what's going to happen, folks, is that even though you're not writing out all the objections, you're going to use the same responses over and over again. You'll see that they fit in. Remember that you're never going to close 100% of the customers, but you could get close. And that's really important. I want you to get as close as possible. Again, remember, the better the presentation, the better the objection. Let me give you some final thoughts and we're going to wrap up. Establish good daily habits of practice. And I'm not gonna bullshit you. I don't like to practice. I don't, but I do it. If I want to be good at something, I do it. I love playing golf and I'm trying to get better at golf. So I go to the driving range every day, almost every day, 4 or 5 days a week. And I hit 30 balls, the same iron, the same club over. I want to be good at it. It's not fun, but I want to be good at it. Here's a good comment. Don't surround yourself with people who are lazy, because you're never going to be successful. Don't allow yourself to be subjected to negative thinking. When people start talking negative, walk away. It is never going to help you. Realize that you're coming to work every day to build a business. It's your business. It's your business. We've talked about that in the past. Take your job seriously. Your customers deserve you at your best. And here's what's interesting. They want you to have good responses to their objections. They want you to be able to overcome the objection. That's really, really important. And always keep an open mind. I say this all the time, once you think you know it all, then get out of this business, because you know what? It cannot be fun anymore. When you've reached the peak and you're the best and you know it all, go do something else, take on another challenge and be good at that challenge. But you know what? I've been in this business my entire adult life. I still don't know it all. I love learning new ideas and hearing new things that everybody comes up with. Now, do I take those thoughts and convert them into my way of doing things? Absolutely. But it gets me thinking. So you're making great presentations and demonstrations. Present your numbers. Don't be afraid to ask for the sale. Would you like to buy the car? And then be awesome at overcoming those 3 basic objections. Price or payment, you're not giving enough for my trade. and I want to go home and think about it. Good luck, everyone, and please be safe. Bye-bye.